nice bit of 1980s tension. Oh, what the f... Roll up for another whiskey review with me, the Whiskey Novice. Yes, thank you for joining me for review number 135. And let's take one more stroll for now, because no doubt there are an awful lot of 18-year-old Scottish single malts out there, so no doubt I will be back. This time, it is the turn of Loch Lomond. Now, I will not hide the fact that I am a bit of a Loch Lomond fanboy. I have said it before. And so, you know, but that's not to say that I'm just going to be glowing about every Loch Lomond just because I'm a fanboy. You know how this works by now. This time, the 18-year-old, being that I'm looking at 18-year-old Scottish single malt, bottled at 46%, non-chill filtered. Yes, there is colour added to it. I know there's colour added to it because I generally, before I do any review, well, say generally, I always, before I do any review, do my homework, a bit of homework, and do a bit of the history on it, a bit of the history of that expression, etc. This time, technically wasn't any different, but I just took the easy route. I took the easy way out. Knowing Master Blender Michael Henry has its benefits, so with Loch Lomond, so I simply just reached out to Michael and asked him the basic facts, for the simple fact that I knew that if I was to get it wrong, Michael would be one of the first to contact me and put me straight. So I just thought to myself, well, I'll just ask Michael directly, and then that way it takes out the middleman, doesn't it? It stops me making mistakes, although I probably still will make mistakes. This one is matured in refill American oak casks. The spirit for this is collected from both the straight neck and swan neck stills there at Loch Lomond. This is stuff that I don't generally give you because I don't generally have that sort of information. But Michael, as usual, will furnish me with any information that I generally ask, and it's very, very much appreciated. There's also quite a high proportion of peated malt here. So here we go. Let's then get stuck in. I don't think I've left anything out. Let's see. Well, it sells for, well, I'll just take you with this now while it's fresh in my head. This is quite a swing yet again on price. I've seen it recently as low as £68. Some places selling up to around the £85 mark. Shop around, you will get it for a good price for an 18-year-old single malt, bottled at 46%, as I said, and non-chill filtered. Into the nose. Woody, dusty, and loads of dry fruit. Now, I said all refill American oak. There is no ex-sherry maturation involved here at all, but there is, for me, quite a strong dried fruit note that I would expect with ex-sherry maturation. But in this case, it's more so than raisins and stuff. It's still the same idea, but sultana, mixed pale. And I'm going to say, no, it's just me, but I'm going to say prunes or prune juice. It states in the label on this, fruit and spice. And I am going to agree with that 100%. If the nose is anything to go by. Yeah, I would agree with that, totally. All that rich, dried fruit leads the way, but it's backed up by honey, and I'm going to suggest syrup as well, golden syrup, and a lovely oak spiciness. Now, I know there's peat used in this to dry out the malt, but I don't get an awful lot of peat in the nose. As a matter of fact, I don't really get any peat on the nose or any smokiness. I've no doubt that it's there, but it just doesn't make itself very well known to me. So the palate, creamy, sweet and sour, slightly sharp, but not overly so. There's just a sharp tinge there. I think that sharpness is actually, it's weird. It's almost for me, it's a very nice minty freshness almost. and it's a minty fresh coating. Strangely, very nice. But as I said, and as I said, creamy. Immediately a very Moorish whiskey. All that dried fruits there, that honey, that syrupy, and even the syrup, golden syrup thing becomes like a texture almost with it. You could almost, this is one of those, it's Moorish, and it's Moorish because every time you visit this one, I did anyway, get something new with the palate. I don't think personally this is a dull whiskey. I know there are ours that don't necessarily rate it. There are those that don't necessarily rate it, but there's a nice rich roundness to it. The dustiness returns. The palate, the honey, that golden syrup, as I said. Then I even get hints of toffee, chocolate. Maybe even a wee hint of coffee. And yes, right at the very back, a smokiness right at the very back. So yeah, good palate. Nice, rich, round palate. Medium to long finish. Smokiness becomes a little apparent. Still memories of that dried fruit. Still memories of that golden syrup. Yes. I like. I'll add a bit of water. I don't want it. It might look like I'm overdoing it. I'm not really overdoing it. That wasn't an awful lot. I wouldn't. But it does like a bit of water. It does benefit from a drop of water, I found. Yeah, definitely benefits from a drop of water. All that dried fruit earlier, this becomes, it takes that drop of water really for me to bring out that fruit when it talks about fruit and spice on the label. Where I found it dried fruit earlier, weirdly, the water just changes that and turns, and then all of a sudden you start to get fresh fruit. Pear, apple. I get toffee, or even salted caramel on the nose now. Yeah, or I've used it before, Caramac, which is an old confectionery here. Definitely benefits the nose, that drop of water. Palate becomes sweeter, obviously a little softer, but there's still a nice wood spice with it. Wee bit more bitter. Slight, very slight rubbery note, which I'll actually put down to the peat in that. I think that's where I'm getting that. It might be the smokiness for me. Yeah, definitely benefits. Finish doesn't change an awful lot, but the finish was good anyway. Yeah, I do like this one. It's good. It falls in, thankfully, into the same sort of bracket as a lot of the 18s that I've reviewed in this series, where they're in around that sort of price. Where if you take a snapshot between sort of £70 and £100, And obviously I have to deal in UK prices because that's what I'm used to. But that snapshot then, you could pretty much filter all of these into that. Maybe there was one I reviewed earlier in the series that didn't fall in there, but I think it's a good price for an 18-year-old whiskey. I've said it before in this series. I said it, I think, at the start. 18 years is a long time. It's a long time for a whiskey. It's a lot of work. It's I said before, it's a gamble for a distiller. There's a lot of work involved. You know, this 18, obviously, or I would suggest, not the youngest whiskey in here to get that flavour profile. So, yeah, I would recommend Loch Lomond 18. I'm a fanboy of Loch Lomond. As I said, this doesn't let me down. It's good mouthfeel, good nose, good palate. It works for me. So, can't really say an awful lot more than that, can I? Yes, if you like this and this, my alternative here, or my suggestion to you, probably might surprise you, surprised me actually. In that, well, that maybe sounds strange. How did I surprise myself? Well, when I said about this changing on the palate. I said about it morphing a bit and not staying the same. When I started this bottle, and this is the first, I'll openly admit, this is the first Loch Lomond 18 bottling I've had. When I started it, it was one thing. Now, we expect that of whiskey. We expect it to be tight, or I would anyway. Neck pour generally doesn't give an awful lot. And yes, it has changed, but it's changed into a whiskey that I didn't expect it to change into. And the reason then that I'm going to offer my suggestion to you, and once again, I'm suggesting to you a bottling that you've most likely had. If you've reached the stage of Loch Lomond 18, I would imagine you have had Bunnahabhain 12-year-old. Now, Bunnahabhain 12-year-old, a strange choice, you may say. But I was highly surprised that this bottle, as it changed, I started then to think, this reminds me of something. That syrupy, rich, fruity thing, dried fruit, then fresh, reminds me of something. What does it remind me of? And then it came to me. It reminds me of Bunnahabhain 12-year-old. And the first thing I did was pour a little glass of Bunnahabhain 12-year-old along with this, nosed them and thought, yeah, there are definite similarities there. I ran it past Mrs. Novice and said, what do you think? And she said, yep, I agree. There are definite similarities there. They're not the same whiskey. Of course they're not. But if you haven't, or let's flip it around again, if Bunnahabhain 12-year-old is one of your go-to whiskies, but you haven't had Loch Lomond 18, give Loch Lomond 18 a go, because they're not the same whiskey. They will do different things, but there are, I think, very definite similarities. Yeah. Fuller, I'm going to suggest. The 18, the Loch Lomond 18, fuller on the palate than the Bunnahabhain 12-year-old. I've got something else there. It's the finish. Fuller finish on that, on the Loch Lomond 18 as well. And the dried fruit that you would get, because remember there is ex-sherry maturation involved here. You would get on the Loch Lomond becomes fresher. This remains slightly more toward that dry fruit. Loch Lomond 18 also dries, I've found. After time you will find it drying on the palate, which I didn't. The Bunnahabhain, I think, doesn't dry just the same. Woof! There. I got through it eventually. So yeah, I would recommend Loch Lomond 18. It hasn't changed my opinion. There's a reason why, and I'm gonna name drop a bit here. Roy Duff at Aquaviti there, who most of us, I'm sure, know. he was the one that suggested to me recently. I made a point recently that I found myself turning more and more to Loch Lomond. And he nailed it for me. I thought it a very, very clever thing. I should have realised this myself, but it just didn't really come to me. It's because I like Campbeltown whiskey. I like Springbank, I like Glengiles, Kilkerran, and I like Glen Scotia. And the reason then, as Roy suggested to me, that I turned to Loch Lomond is you're getting a lot of that same feel as you're getting with those Campbeltown whiskies in Loch Lomond. You're getting that rich, thick, slightly funky thing every now and again. The malt is treated a lot in the same way, where you're mixing proportions of peated malt and with non-peated and working together to get something that just creates a great balance. So it then makes perfect sense to me why I'm a Loch Lomond fanboy, because you can get it, you can buy it. So many of those Campbeltown whiskies, as we know, you just can't get your hands on anymore. But if you want something of quality, of feel, of grip, you can get your hands on, then I would direct you toward Loch Lomond. There. That's about that. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. Thank you very, very much to my patrons. If you wish to join that group, as per usual, the details are below in the video description, as you should know, but I suppose. Thank you very much for joining me. Until the next time, my friends, here's your good health. Cheers. Hey, thanks for watching my video. Please click and subscribe to be notified of further content.